time the faces of those killed so far in this uprising for Egypt. His raw emotion broadcast live on Egyptian television revealed a man distressed but strong in his conviction.
First of all, I send my condolences to all the people who were killed. It was a peaceful revolution. We didn't want to do any damage. Don't focus your cameras on me. I'm not a hero. The real heroes are the youth who are behind this revolution. By God's will, we're going to clean this country of this rubbish.
In Liberation Square, his words seemed to invigorate the crowd.
I'd be proud to have a son like that. I'm so happy this is the youth of Egypt, and he thinks this way. Wael speaks straight from his heart.
So do you think that he's emerging as a leader of this revolution?
I think the people are the leader of this revolution, and you cannot say that there is one person who's the leader, but Wael Ghanem is a very effective character and figure.
From the very start, this uprising has always been all about the people. It hasn't been led by any one particular group, and that's why Wael Ghanem's words have resonated with the young and the old here, because they feel he's not an official, he's not a politician, he's speaking as an Egyptian. Outside the square too, Wael fever ran high. Andrew was woken up by his mother late at night, shouting at him to watch the interview.
The whole time he kept on repeating that it wasn't like I was just sitting on my keyboard, but I'm not the hero, it's the other people that actually went down and tried to change the whole system. That was the most thing I liked about it.
Whether Wael Ghanem emerges as a leader will depend on if he continues to play the same active role which has made him a driving force behind this uprising. Either way, he's reminded Egyptians everywhere of the essence of this movement, a people's revolt against a system they no longer accept. Shireen Tadros, Al Jazeera, Cairo.
Let's speak to Abdur Chowdhury in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's a professor of economics at Marquette University and joins us on the telephone. Welcome to Al Jazeera. We're talking, of course, a lot about the political situation and the implications in Egypt, but I'd like to get your take on what's happening to the country economically. Clearly, it's taking a beating. How much more can the protests hurt the value of Egyptian businesses and the economy if this uncertainty goes on?
Thank you for having me on your program. Basically, the unrest is having a significant negative impact on the Egyptian economy, and the longer the unrest continues, the worse the Egyptian economy will be. What we have seen in the last couple of weeks is tourism, which is one of the major foreign exchange earning in Egypt, basically has come to a standstill. We have seen that business firms, manufacturing firms, both the small and large, have closed down. So this will have a long-lasting impact on the Egyptian economy.
We're also seeing we're seeing a run on banks. We're seeing volatility on the currency. The stock market is closed. And speaking of the currency, actually, it's at a 6-year low. What's your outlook for the Egyptian pound?
The Egyptian pound, basically what we are seeing right now is because of the uncertainty, political uncertainty, we see investors, both domestic as well as foreign investors, they're very uncertain what will happen in Egypt. So they're not investing, they're not buying Egyptian bonds, or they're not investing in the stock market. So in terms of the exchange rate, the pound, it will take a beating, and we will see a drop in the value of pound in the next couple of weeks.
The central bank, the Egyptian central bank, is also warning that $8 billion could flow out of the banking system, and that's in the next 2 weeks. What impact is that likely to have, and how concerned are you with that outflow of cash?
That is of serious concern to the Egyptian policymakers. What is going to happen is this money is flowing out of the Egyptian economy. Most of that money was in the stock market, in the financial market, so that is going out. Now, if this trend continues, you'll see that more money will go out of the economy. It's the foreign investors who will take their money away from the economy, and also many Egyptian businessmen, given the situation, they will also try to take their money out of the country to a safer place. So that does not bode well for the future of the economy. I'm just wondering,
do you have a figure yourself for how much the daily protests are impacting the Egyptian economy?
This is obviously a rough calculation at this point, but all calculations at this point indicate that the loss to the economy in terms of lost output, lost productivity is at least $1 billion.
$1 billion. Okay, Abdur Chowdhury, thank you very much for talking to us from Wisconsin. Well, supporters of the protest in Egypt have been making their voices heard in the Jordanian capital, Amman. Demonstrators gathered near the Egyptian embassy. They held banners condemning President Hosni Mubarak and called for a quick transition of power. To Haiti now, where the government has granted a passport to an exiled former leader. For more on that, let's cross to Shihab Ratansi in our Washington, D.C. news center. Shihab.
Doreen, thanks. Not just any leader. Al Jazeera has learned that the lawyer for the ousted president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, has collected a new passport for him and has left the country. Aristide was Haiti's first democratically elected leader. He was forced from power in 2004 and has lived in South Africa in exile ever since. The latest development comes at a time of political crisis for Haiti. A date for a second round of presidential elections has now been set after a first round marred by irregularities and low turnout. Amidst this, the former leader Jean-Claude Baby Dog Duvalier returned to the country and is facing human rights charges. So let's go to Sebastian Walker in Port-au-Prince. You found this out for us by speaking to Aristide's lawyer directly. What exactly did he tell you?
Well, he told us the news that many here had been talking about for days. We'd heard that a passport had been prepared and that Haitian authorities were ready to issue it to Aristide's legal team. But up until this evening, that has been shrouded in confusion. We didn't know if it was even true. Aristide's people were telling us that, unless they have this passport in their hands, they're not going to believe that this is happening. Now, I did speak to his lawyer as he was boarding a plane from Port-au-Prince back to Miami, and he told me he is now in possession of this new passport issued for this exiled former Haitian president who's been living in South Africa since 2004. So a very significant development here.
And we are going into that second round of elections where there isn't that much enthusiasm for those elections. How much of a political force might Aristide be now?
Well, he's still hugely popular politically here in Haiti. His Lavalas political party is still by far the most widely supported political group in this country. They were excluded from the recent elections, and that was a source of quite a lot of discontent. There was large street protests organized by Lavalas, contesting the decision that meant that they were excluded from participating in the election. So return of Aristide back into this very fragile political situation, which had up until a couple of weeks ago had seemed to have stalled completely, is certainly going to make things very unpredictable. Right now, as you say, there is a presidential runoff vote scheduled for March the 20th, but if this very popular political figure comes back into a situation like that, there's really no telling what will happen. And one possible consequence is huge numbers of Lavalas supporters turning out on the street to welcome their exiled former leader, and that will be seen certainly by the international officials we're speaking to as a possibly destabilizing influence that could have an unpredictable consequence on the political process.
Yeah, Sebastian Walker, thank you very much. In Brazil, authorities say they've negotiated an end to a prison riot in which 6 inmates were killed. According to a police officer, overcrowding at the institution in Pinheiro sparked fighting between inmates on Monday night. 2 prisoners were decapitated in the violence. The officer says 100 inmates were packed into a prison built to hold 30 people. Colombia's president says he will not meet with members of the armed rebel group FARC unless they release all of their hostages. A spokesman for the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia told a news agency in the country that the expected release of another 5 hostages should prompt peace talks. But President Juan Manuel Santos says more concessions must be made first. FARC currently holds at least 18 hostages, all of the members of Colombia's security forces. The father of one of the 3 teenage boys shot dead in the Mexican border city of Juarez has called for justice. The boys, 2 of them U.S. citizens, were killed at a car dealership in the city in an apparent attack by a gang. A friend of the 2 U.S. teenagers said he had crossed the border with them to attend a party. He returned home. His friends had stayed in Juarez to buy a car. Juarez is one of the most violent cities in Mexico. More than 8,000 people have been murdered there since 2008 amid the Mexican government's crackdown on drug cartels. That continuing war against gangs in northern Mexico has forced some to flee to the nation's capital. And as Mariana Sanchez explains, Mexico City has become now a kind of safe haven from the violence.
Pedaling on safer grounds, 22-year-old Rafael Negrete was studying political science in the northern city of Monterrey.